Let me tell you a little about my new novella, The Fen Witch of Goosefeather Split. I've self-published it, which gives me control over pricing, so I can choose to give away the ebook from time to time and sell the paperback at cost. I consider it a way of saying thank you to all those that have supported my work so far, and it gives new readers a chance to discover me. The artwork is by my daughter Georgia. I'm really pleased with the way it turned out. It's used both inside and outside the novella. I'm hoping there are a couple of things about the title that jump out at you. The Fen Witch and Goosefeather Split. So before I do a short reading from the opening chapter, I'm going to tell you a little about those. Now, if you were to look up Fen Witch, you might find a description of a woman with one nostril, webbed feet, razor-sharp claws, and fiery eyes. I certainly had this in mind when writing the scenes featuring the witch. Many of these ideas come from the wetland terrain, and the image of this creature rising from the mire was one I returned to again and again when plotting the novella. In truth, while many women in the Fens were known as witches, they were far removed from this description, and more likely to be herbalists and healers. Given the terrain and the difficulty getting to a so-called real doctor, many people were dependent upon the skills of those that were called witches. So the idea that a witch may not be what we imagine it is important to the story. Next, Goosefeather Split. There's no such real place as Goosefeather Split, but the splitting of a goose feather is a genuine Fenland custom. In times of trouble, show a split goose feather to a true man of the Fens and he will offer you aid. It is said that when fleeing Oliver Cromwell's Roundhead soldiers somewhere in the Fens, Charles the First faced capture. But he showed a split goose feather, and he was allowed to pass through the Fens unharmed. Alas, he didn't avoid capture for long, and soon after Cromwell had him put to death. In my novella, Goosefeather Split is the name given to the place where this event in history is said to have happened, somewhere in the wilds of Norfolk. From the contents page, the list of chapter titles is a clue to another important aspect of the novella. Music. Music can be used as a great escape from reality, and that comes across here, but also it's something we remember from the happy times in our life, which is another important feature. So here's chapter 1, in which Charlie's woken from his nightmare. Some bad news. For years, every time I closed my eyes, I saw her rise from the marsh at Goosefeather Split. Nightmares have augmented the memory, allowed me to study in detail that which I witnessed in reality for only seconds. When she rises, vines twist around her as if the swamp itself is sentient, its tentacles reluctant to release her. Filthy water rushes from her body in a cascade and continues to drip from the dark and sodden rags she wears, and as the vines let her go, she takes her first stuttering steps. Wet earth squelches beneath her feet, and her webbed toes sink into the thick, dark mud where nothing grows. Her fingers too are webbed, and as she holds one hand towards me, I see the fingernails, long, sharp, and deadly, like talons. Her face, and I'm always thankful for this, is covered by a mass of thick black hair that clings to the contours and comes together below her chin into a point from which water continues to run. A guttural noise bubbles in her throat, and I hear only one word. Go. For almost 30 years I've had that dream, albeit more sporadically in recent times. It always has the same effect. Goosebumps launch a full assault on my arms and legs, and invisible hands grab my stomach and squeeze tight. It was from that dream, at its very conclusion, that a blaring noise woke me. Confused and muttering gibberish, heart rate soaring, I scrabbled on the side table, first mashing buttons on the alarm clock to no effect, mistaking it as the source, before clutching my phone. The alarm clock, the bed, even the room itself were still alien to me. but at least I didn't have to worry about waking anyone. The caller ID revealed who was calling. Gavin? I murmured after accepting the call. Hey, sorry to bother you at this hour, Charlie. Something wasn't right. He sounded artificial, an imitation of himself. I glanced at the clock before responding. 1:30. Something had to be wrong for him to call at this hour, and the image of the Fen Witch pointing with her razor fingers flashed again into my memory. What is it? Mick's not with you, is he? Gavin said, his voice fractured. Terror hid in the pauses between words. Trying so hard to be carefree, to be his usual self, must have been killing him. But that was the kind of man Gavin was. He wouldn't deliberately want to hurt anyone. For how long had he been fretting about the whereabouts of his husband? For how long had he been poised with his phone, ready to make the call? I wished I could lie. Tell him I knew where Mick was. He'd driven across the country to see me, and fallen asleep on the couch after we went head to head with shots of tequila. But that wouldn't be the truth. Yes, Mick had been there for me recently, but not in person. He'd been at the end of the phone trying to stop me falling into a spiral of despair because of my separation from Jennifer, trying to persuade me not to give up on my marriage, but the distance meant he could only visit at weekends. Sorry, Gavin, I said, my guts squeezing into a tight ball. I've not heard from him. Okay, not to worry. Gavin hung up, clearly worried. Now I was too. Another flash from the dream, the witch's words resonating in my mind. Go. So if that's got you intrigued, you can pick up the ebook for free until the end of the day on the 28th of March. If you want a paperback copy, I have a limited run of only 100. No more will ever be printed, so get in touch if you want one. Thank you for listening. Have a good day.